And we're live again. So yeah, we jumped on a couple of minutes before. So we're counting down, reverse countdown, towards the end of today's event, which was really, really fun for us at least. Um, so, we'll soon review, the winners and kind of like, whoever played. Many people played and done great things here. But before we do that, we're gonna wait for kind of like for it to completely end. And then we're going to talk about, we're going to kind of like go through one by one and review them. Um, you know, yeah, I could see the participation here today was remarkable, pretty great. And I do appreciate that some of you folks are, celebrating the Orthodox Easter. So, um, you know, I know it wasn't easy for all of you to join, but still got a lot of participation. It was fun. So yeah, so I have Robbie here with me, and we're gonna probably summarize that everything here in a couple of minutes, and have the countdown going in about.
Exactly. That's there's still 3 more minutes to get your last solves in. So I don't know if anybody's very close and maybe scrambling together their code or whatnot to get it to work. And it's like I've been like I played in a CTF like this one once, and I spent all day on one challenge. It was like with the whole, and it was one challenge that we needed to win. And this time started counting down, but I was so close. It was like 2 minutes, and we
Mm.
were all physically together as a big group. The CTF team were all standing around the computer, like trying to get it, and then you run it. Oh shit! No, this is wrong. We have to change this, and like the clock is counting down. And I still remember, like 7 seconds before the end, we submitted the flag and took the first place in that CTF. That was like. So maybe there are
Wow,
some buzzer beaters here as well that are getting very close. That's
that's
that was
awesome. That's awesome. Given that we had like people here 2.5 hours, even less, a little less, into the game solving everything. That's really remarkable this time. But yeah, absolutely. I can see how some people are scrambling towards the end to solve their last.
it's that pressure that gets added onto it. Like there's a time limit that makes it so I don't know. It does something with your brain that kind of gives you the answer right at the end. That makes like because if you have like an indefinite game, it's doesn't matter if you don't solve it today. There's tomorrow. But now it's like time locked. So you have to get it right now. So your brain knows that and starts going into overdrive. And that's when for me at least the creative juices really get flowing. So maybe other people have that as well.
There's definitely something about it, about the time pressure. That's why I like the. That's why I like the blitz. It doesn't give you a
Yeah,
lot of time to wonder. You can't say, okay, I'll do it. You know, I'm gonna wait and
yeah,
really.
definitely.
Yeah,
I
but
think also that's kind of what sets this CTF apart. Is like two things mainly. One is that it's not only geared towards hackers but also towards developers, which means that challenges are maybe sometimes a little bit easier for hackers, but they're also different than other CTS because they're always geared towards learning developers something about code. So that's one very interesting angle. And then the second is, well, it's only 6 hours. Like
Mhm.
you have these 6 hours to solve as many things as you can. You don't have 24 hours. You can go and sleep on something because, you maybe if you do a nap, you can go and sleep on something, but I don't think that's recommended if you want to really go for the win. But I think it also kind of supports like a healthier lifestyle where you can win just by being really good, and you can't win by just staying up all night. So that's kind of also an
Yeah,
element of it. But
that's true. That's true. And we're trying to focus on smaller pieces of code, so it's not a full system with a ton of code and
exactly.
configuration stuff like that. It's really geared towards specific code. So I see that we're almost 10. So yeah,
All right.
10, 9,
Nine,
8,
eight,
7,
seven,
6,
6, 5,
4,
4, 3,
3, 2,
2,
1.
1. All right.
Yeah,
Well
that's
done,
it.
everybody.
That's
That's
it,
the end of the
guys.
event.
Yeah, that concludes the event. And
Yes.
yeah, so now we're done. So hello everyone, whoever's joining right now. We're at the top of the hour, 4 p.m. Eastern. and our challenge is officially over. So
Yeah.
as you see here, time is over. We already have our list of winners here. Pretty nice list. Actually, when I say winners, again, we're going to kind of like audit that and make sure that by tomorrow we have a final list, but it is pretty clear who won the first 3 spots here, and they were around even before. But tomorrow we're going to announce it formally. And I want to take this opportunity, first of all, to thank you all for this fun, challenge and game, and for making it fun and asking all those smart questions and being involved and kind of like providing feedback and thoughts. And it was really, really enlightening to see so many ideas and so many things going on. So I really loved this challenge today. And it does seem like there's a nice distribution of solvers. You can see there's 6 people solved the entire 6 of the challenges. Then there are a few people, like probably 4 people solved the 5 of which is pretty great. Some of those are really hard, and 4 and so on. So you can see people here. Overall 42 people participated, or not participated. Many more participated, but we're able to solve something. So that's pretty great. And yeah, so I think it was from our perspective, it was a great success to see you all playing and coming up with all those great ideas. So
Yeah,
with
to
that,
anybody who participated and solved anything, I want to say a huge pat on your back, because you did great. I think if you come out on a Sunday and play and solve these challenges, that shows that you truly are dedicated to whatever you're doing, whether that is being a developer or whether that is being a hacker. It shows some real dedications, and that's awesome to see. Those passionate people like you is kind of what the whole industry needs. So big pat on the back for everyone.
Absolutely. And I can say from our perspective, we're committed to continue to do this, continue doing it, and continue making it better and better, and kind of like adjusting based on your guys' feedback. We would love to get ideas from you. Like, I know that there are pretty smart community members right now joined our sessions here, and I would love to get ideas and thoughts and kind of like feedback for everything that you've seen and haven't seen, you want to see, because we want to make it something as a habit, at least doing it 4 times a year, once a quarter. So we've done one in February. Well, now it's May. We're doing another one. We're probably going to do in a couple of months another one, and continue to do so as we go. We're going to make it kind of like a tradition, which I think is fun and is helping so many people to kind of like see different things and take the time. And it's also not super time consuming. It's only 6 hours, and within the 6 hours you have smaller pieces of code, and you have to find those vulnerabilities and exploit them. So it's actually, Robbie mentioned it before we started. It's like, this is forcing you to get those ideas on time. You don't have all the time in the world to do it. You're just very focused on solving it right now. So I think we're going to probably review quickly all the challenges, all the 6 challenges. I'm going to start with the first 3. Let's see, first of all, if is there any question here that was asked? No, it seems like people are just commenting.
So far, people are just saying that the CTF was awesome, that they liked it, that they liked having a source code available, it was well made. So that's always really lovely to hear. Thank you, guys. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
And thank you all for coming along and playing and doing so incredibly well. Thank you.
Absolutely. And yeah, by all means, feedback that is not so good as well, we'd like to hear, because that's how we make it better. That's how we can perfect it and make it kind of like more interesting and more engaging. And by all means, invite your friends, your mates and counterparts, and tell them about it, because we want to make it a tradition that many people attend, and the more the merrier. It's going to be more fun.
But Itzik, right now, I know there's a lot of people that maybe were stuck on some of these challenges, and there's a lot of people that may be interested in kind of what the thought process is behind solving these. So
yep.
Can you walk me through that first challenge, log in as an admin? How did I log in as an admin?
Yeah, so let me do that. So let's start with the first one. Log in as an admin, as you mentioned. As you already mentioned before, there's an SQL injection vulnerability here. That is something that someone could identify pretty quickly at the gate, right? Because you can see parameters here are being incorporated here. You can see them, if I scroll down, you can see them flowing from the request directly without sanitization of any sort, right? And straight into the SQL query. And that's not good. So we know that what the vulnerability is, but how the hell am I supposed to use it? Okay. So there are two main ways to think about it. One is I can run a query and get the data and then use the data to actually hack it. In this case, I want to get the password, right? And I want to use the password, so I can do that here. And once I got the password, all I need is the username, which is that's already said here, like it's FitzH, right? And the password, once I get it, I incorporate it here and I get the flag. That's one approach. The other approach is a little more interesting, I think, which is kind of like manipulating the SQL sentence to not even need passwords. So you can select literals as your selected data instead of actually selecting them from the code. You can say something like ABC as password. So from this point, the SQL sentence or the SQL query is going to return that as password. So what you can do is, since you have this piece of code here that makes sure that what was returned here was actually the password. Oh, sorry about that. Refresh. Yeah. So you have this question here, or that's the condition here that makes sure that the password is indeed what's returned. You can make the query return it. So if you say ABC as password, and then password equals ABC, and username is FitzH, you solved it. You're logged in as FitzH, and you'll get the first last name, which you don't know, and the role from the system. Okay,
Really cool.
Those are the two ways to do it. So that's
I think for this challenge as well, like SQL injections, they should by this point be eradicated from the internet. There's no reason for SQL injections still to exist. But I work as a penetration tester. The amount of times that I still see these in applications is incredible. And I think this is kind of a little more difficult than the usual SQL injection, because also you don't get any outputs directly back. Like it has to return specifically one row and stuff like that. And there's like a ton of solutions here. I think somebody else even, this was insane, that they used a time-based solution where they brute forced the password letter by letter and then performed a sleep if it was correct. And that way they could also like get data out of there. So yeah, a lot was possible here, even though it may not be as trivial as your usual SQL injection that you see in the training courses that you most often come across. But it was still definitely doable. And this is the kind of stuff that I see a lot in real life, where the basic SQL injections, sure, they've all been tested, but like these little bit more advanced versions are still present. So yeah.
Exactly. So let's move on to the second challenge. The second challenge is that gateway. Okay, so we talked about it last time. We said, okay, this is a real world scenario, kind of a trimmed down version of a real world scenario where you have some gateway invoking internal APIs that are supposed to be secure, but this gateway is also responsible of authentication. So it does the authentication and sends back only the APIs that require authentication. Certain scenarios can be like one requires X authentication, B in the second part requires another type of authentication. This one is fairly simple. Requires authentication, doesn't require authentication. And what ends up happening here is that if it's not on the list, it will go to no authentication. And if it's on the list, to authentication. And then it's invoked based on the name you provided. So the best way to solve it is to figure out an API name that returns false for this question, okay, but still is valid to actually invoke here, okay? So that's the API. Sorry, the API is right here, okay? Once you've done that, you succeeded. So we want, in this case, we want to get a user. right? So to get a user, we need the get user API endpoint, okay? Now let's look at what type of sanitization there is, because the API name is going through some sort of sanitization. One here is it's trying to replace everything in lowercase and then replace all the slashes, okay? Backslash and forward slash, okay? So those are both replaced. So I can't use slash because slash would be a good idea. I can, if I send get user with slash at the end, it could have worked, but here it doesn't let me. But there are other types of characters that I can, invoke here, that you can think of. I'm not going to tell you, but you can think of other characters that are URL valid, okay? And they don't break the URL, but it still won't return true here, right? So if you had something that you can send get user, won't find it here, but will still be valid when you invoke the API, you solved it, okay? And it was easy for some of you folks and a little more complicated for some others.
Do you know what, Itzik? I was actually talking with somebody today, and they said this exact trick that you used here in this challenge just last week netted them a bounty of $1,000, where they also, the application was checking URLs and performing sanitization on a specific type of URL, but they were also forgetting that URLs are very complex in the exact same way as here. So like this is stuff that can get you bounties and bug bounty that actually happens in the real world. Yeah.
Absolutely. And developers tend to forget that. And again, developers are smart people. They're not forgetting it because they don't know. It's because they don't think about it. And that's what we're trying to do, is help them think about those things, because in addition to the functionality that you expect, you have to think about what you don't expect and what you don't expect to happen, and see if there's a way to really, trick the system and make it work. So in this case, again, if you haven't solved it yet, you can try now different types of things that you can end the URL with and try to break it. Let's move on to the third one. So the third one here, okay, was fairly simple XSS. But here the developer thought about, okay, how am I going to make sure that that JavaScript colon is not possible here? That's probably I'm most concerned about that, because it's kind of like I'm opening up the URL to redirect to somewhere, and instead of redirect, I can inject JavaScript. That's the big deal. Okay, so the sanitized link here actually replaces all the occurrences of JavaScript, and it does it until there's no JavaScript. So if you can't even fool with JavaScript script and replace JavaScript, then you get JavaScript. This one won't work here because it will replace it until there's no JavaScript in place. But there is one thing that is missing here, because JavaScript is definitely, something that when you look at string comparison won't be captured if you added special characters. So there are certain special characters that are not visible or are kind of like control characters that you could potentially add into the word JavaScript, and it will break this comparison, but it won't break what the browser is doing to run JavaScript. So think about that. If there are control characters that you can add here to confuse this sanitization method, but still make it work, that's what you're looking for. Any other notes here, Robbie?
No, it's this is one that I see developers forget all the time as well. Even just the simple form of just allowing the user to redirect to anywhere, but forgetting that the JavaScript scheme exists and redirecting to JavaScript and leading to an XSS, very common. Also, if you're a hacker, do this in bug bounty. It's something that not a lot of people do for some reason. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for the fourth, I'm going to transfer it to you.
Yes, but before we get into that one, I see one question in the chat that I would like to answer, and that one is from Sipulke saying, who gets swag? So that's a great question, Sipulke. Right now, the CTF has ended, and we'll give out swag to the best write-ups that we get. So if you solved one of these challenges and you thought, hey, I did that in a pretty cool and creative way, then create a write-up, publish it somewhere, send it over to us, either via LinkedIn, either via mail, whatever. send it to us, and then we'll include it in the list. And if yours was a creative, cool write-up, then we'll share it with the world, and then you will get some swag. So yeah, that's how you can get some swag.
Right. And people want to be accurate, and they should. So we're going to let you send those write-ups 2 weeks from now until 10 a.m., the time that the challenge is started. So 10 a.m. the following Sunday. Okay? So 10 a.m. the following Sunday is the deadline, I would say, for submitting write-ups. Submit them, we'll review them, and we'll be more than happy to give away swag. Credits.
Yeah, and Jorian also asks, where can you send them? If you just send them on Discord, that's also perfectly fine. Just make sure that we say, hey, thank you for the write-up, and that make sure that we have seen it and that we actually have stored it. And anywhere is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then let's move on to challenge number 4. So this is where we see a 3-pepper challenge. So things are ramping up here. And in this challenge, you have a really weird application. And if you scroll down a bit into the application to the first API endpoint, not the forbidden one, but the one there, we see that for the endpoint get API key, it does some stuff with an authorization header and it verifies it. And if it's valid, then it will use the API key and do some stuff. But if it's not valid, it will set a header location to point to forbidden, and then at the end still send the result. So that's one bug that we see here is, and this is something that I actually found in Bug Bounty in real life, is an application that says, okay, you're not authenticated. I'm going to redirect you to the forbidden page, but it still adds the result of the API calls in the response. But of course, you never see it because the browser, when it showcases it, the browser will just see, oh, a redirection to forbidden, I'll redirect it. But if you actually curl those calls, then the content is actually there. And yeah, this is something that was in Bug Bounty in a program that had been looked over by 1,000 hackers before. But because it was so weird and random, and I don't even know how they did it there, it never got checked by anybody. So yeah, a very weird situation. But that is one of the bugs in this code. Now, the second bug, and that is if we scroll down a bit more the one API call above, please. Yes, that one. So create API key. You can create API keys for users. That's a bit strange, right? And so to get the flag, you need an API key, but you can also create API keys. And you can get a sample or you can make an API key for a user. Now, these API keys, they are UUIDs. So they are some kind of ID, and you've probably heard of UUID version 4 before, but in this case, version 1 is used. And now, version 1 of UUID is kind of interesting because UUIDs are meant to be completely random. They will never come back twice. They are impossible to guess. But that is not the case with UUID v4, because UUID v4, what it does is it takes the current timestamp and the MAC address of the PC, and it combines those together in an ID. But what does that mean? Well, if you take the MAC address, it will always be the same, and the time will just only be slightly different. So if you generate 2 UUIDs, then they will be very, very similar for version 1, because the timestamp, well, it only changes a bit. So what could you do in this challenge? You could create a new API key for the user administrator, look at the time that response was created by the server, and then generate a list of possible API keys for possible timestamps that could be valid for that user. And with the sample, you could then steal the MAC address from that PC, and then you have the MAC address and a potential time, and then you just put those together and you have a list of API keys that you can go through and check if they are correct. And that is kind of the issue here. UUID version 1 should never, ever be used. Always use UUID version 4 for anything you do. And that is one vulnerability here. But in the chat, I also saw Ryan saying for an earlier challenge, he said, yeah, I can see myself making mistakes like this in everyday coding. And yeah, even I made a big mistake in this challenge. And if you scroll a bit down further, there was apparently, in that if statement on line 49, there is actually a server-side prototype pollution kind of vulnerability, where because you can select or because you can change the values of a specific. So you can change the users array in some way, but if you change the users array to select the constructor of the users array, then you can get access to its prototype, and via its prototype, you can actually control stuff. I don't even understand the full exploit myself. I haven't seen it yet, but I saw just now that Jorian posted his full exploit into the chat on Discord. So so you can definitely go onto our Discord to view that unintended solution that bypassed this whole insane exploit that you actually needed for this challenge. And that is how some of the pros here solve the challenge. It totally slipped by me. Honestly, I don't even fully understand it myself right now. So I definitely have to do some work on fully understanding it. Oh, it wasn't a prototype pollution, but just accessing another property on users that is not a real user. Oh, okay. Yes, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, a kind of logic bug in there. Okay. Well, see, even I make security mistakes, and I do security for a living. So yeah, that shows that you cannot expect developers to write secure code from the first try. Definitely not when security is not in their minds. Even security experts write insecure code. So yeah, that's exactly why training is needed and all that stuff. But this is challenge 4. I also see some really interesting comments. And I see Mahuta saying continuous learning is required to understand the coding security by design. That is totally correct. Like, you need to constantly keep learning. Security needs to be in the back of your mind at all points, like with everything you write. And he also has another question that I'm going to give out to Itzik. Itzik, Maruta asks, how can we get training to secure coding practices?
Well, that's a great question. So Robbie, you and I are working on that furiously. And within Wizer, we're an organization that's what we do. We do security awareness. But last year we started with secure development, coding, secure coding. Sorry. And so what we do is we build courses, we build trainings, and Robbie and I are working with other hackers as well to build trainings for multiple languages and multiple environments. And that is how you do it. I mean, you need to listen to people who actually have that knowledge. Obviously, you can research on your own, and I do a lot of that myself. I'm looking at, you can do things a lot online, but there's a lot of accumulated knowledge. There's the OS organization, which is actually publishing the biggest and more likely, ideas and categories of things that you should be learning and understand. And by the way, this September, they're releasing another refresh of the version. The last one was 2021. So every couple of years, they update the different topics that are there. If you focus on that and you expand a little bit and you read a lot and you kind of like make yourself aware of what's going on, that's the way to keep up. And I think doing those CTFs is also part of the thing, because that's actually practical, right? That is something that, people say, oh, but you know what? Hacking into something and breaking into something is not really, is not the same as building stuff that is secure. Well, I kind of disagree, because if you learn to understand the mindset of how to break into stuff, you make it's embedded within you. You have the emotional, I would say, experience that you experienced of hacking things, and you have the mindset. So you're a much better protector. If you know what the mindset is for, whoever you're protecting from or against, you're much better protected. And you will do the right things. You will make it as part of your habits of building code. And I see it on myself as I develop those kind of like capabilities. I'm a software developer. So,
yeah, totally. And that's exactly what we're trying to like teach developers or show them, is we want to also make it continuous. So what we do is we have videos of 5 to 10 minutes on a topic, and every month a developer watches a new video on a new topic. That way security is always at the back of their minds. And then every 2 weeks there's these little CTF challenges that come out, so security is always at the back of their minds, and they can get in the future a scoreboard like this within their company to like kind of fight the other developers and see who is the best at these CTFs to kind of get that competition going, get that security mindset going in the company. Because of course, not one person can learn all of security in a month. I've been doing security for 7 years and I still don't know all of security, as it's very, very obvious. So a developer whose main job is not even security, they can never learn it all at once. So that's why making bite-sized, splitting it up is probably the best there.
Again, baby steps. What we see right now is, again, is we're starting to talk to developers and starting to work with developers, especially developers. They are pretty behind, right? I'm not saying all of them. Like, there are some pretty savvy ones with a lot of knowledge in security and understanding how to break into stuff. But there's a lot of developers out there that are not super educated about those things. And again, I think it's really shameful because we are in a situation where hackers, and at least ethical hackers, fine, but potential attackers, they created a gap, a huge gap. They know so much more about how to break into stuff than developers. We need to close this gap a little bit, right? Us ethical hackers and developers, we need to be at a level that allows us to protect the best, and that's how we're gonna fight it. It's not gonna be using. By the way, there's a lot of hype out there about like using Copilot and stuff like that. That's actually adding more risks to the mix, and we have separate conversations about this. So I won't start it now, but definitely, those co-pilots and things like that, they add vulnerabilities because they learn from us. And if we're making mistakes, they're even amplifying it. They're kind of like making it a habit. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Murata, to finish off this conversation, Murata adds into the chat that in the software development lifecycle, it should involve CTF knowledge as well. Like every year, awareness trainings plus secure coding trainings should be the way to going forward. And I fully agree with that. So yeah, very good discussion there. Visit the Wizer website if you want to learn more, or just send us a message. That's always possible.
Exactly. We are here for that. That's what we do.
Perfect. Now we've reached the 5th challenge, I believe.
Fifth.
Discussed right now, and this one is called Payload Setion. And I think for a lot of people, I've heard saying that this is their favorite challenge of the event. I personally like it a lot as well. And there's not much that we need to discuss here. It's really simple. You just need to make one payload that hacks 6 different vulnerability types. And the whole trick with that is that payload cannot be longer than 137 characters. So here we see some goals on the screen. So the first goal is your payload, it must read @c passwd. So that's a local file inclusion. So your payload should include //// @c passwd. Then the second goal is that you need to read the admin password. And then here we see a very simple SQL injection. Once again, select the username from users where the password is the payload that you have. And now this is where it gets a bit tricky, because obviously in an SQL injection, the SQL has to be valid SQL, but you can easily bypass that by having like a dash at the end, which comments out the rest. But then we need to add in a third payload at the end, which does the following. It reads internal secrets.txt. And if we look at this, we see it starts a new Express app that is only available to the local host. So this easily points towards, well, you have to perform an SSRF. And then if you can see, it's just going to perform axios.get of your payload. So it's just going to get your payload. So now your whole payload, that's already an XSS payload and an LFI, also needs to point towards localhost and be incredibly short. And you could do this by starting your payload with // and then 0 : the port and then /internal secrets, because 0 just as an IP address will result in 0.0.0.0. That's how the computer will interpret it, which then points to localhost as well. So yeah, that was also pretty tricky, but we're not done yet. Oh no, we also still need to read the environment variable commands, and this was done through a command injection. So we ls off our payload. Now here, somewhere in your payload, you need to fit in a semicolon and then run the environment command and then have another semicolon whilst still keeping all the other payloads intact. But then we're not even done at that point, because if we scroll down, there's more. There is always more. This is to read another environment variable, but this time with an SSDI, so a server-side template injection. And if you thought that was everything, no, we still have one final chapter, and that is to also include an XSS in this one single payload of 137 characters. Yeah, this is a really fun challenge. I think anybody at any difficulty level can kind of take this challenge and give it a go. Maybe remove the check for the length for yourself, just so you can kind of give yourself a bigger space to play with. And because it requires a good, deep understanding of every vulnerability shown here. And all these vulnerabilities are like the most basic versions of these vulnerabilities. But by having to combine them in ways that they all still work at once, you kind of fully need to understand the vulnerability type and what's going on. So I think this is a great challenge, even for beginners. Take the code, take it offline, and like maybe remove parts. Start with only 3 vulnerability types at once, and then just add another one. And that way learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love this
great.
challenge.
This is a great one. I loved it. Okay.
All right, cool. Then we get to the last and final challenge, and is the Sign Here challenge. This one again comes straight from a bug bounty story where there was a mobile application, and this mobile application it made requests with a backend. So as a mobile pen tester, you add some proxy tool in between there, you bypass a certificate pinning, whatnot, and you try to read the requests. But I couldn't change the requests because they did some signing on the app. So the phone would sign a request cryptographically, send it to the server, and the server would then check the signature. Because I was proxying in between there, I couldn't change anything because then the signature would be wrong. So I had to reverse engineer that application, and that application used a recent version of React Native, and that recent React Native version has some Hermes bytecode. And so this challenge kind of is that you download the APK and you reverse the Hermes bytecode to find out the secret key that is used for signing the requests. Mm-hmm. And if you can get that secret key, then you can perform the signature yourself, and you can kind of craft requests to the API. And via those crafted requests, you can then actually log in and get the flag through there. That's kind of the goal of this challenge.
Yep. So you go to download, you get the APK, need to reverse engineer it, and get that from there. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
I also see somebody in the chat posted their payload for challenge number 5, and that is very short. That is a really sick payload. I'm quickly going to try to get the length of that payload, because my lowest that I could get was 137, and this person has got it down to 95 characters. That is an incredible payload. Wow. Really cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, so I think we went through all of them. Obviously, there's a lot, of creative solutions here, and people found all sorts of bypasses and unintended solutions. But, the fun part is unintended solutions are also intended solutions, because what is it that we're looking for? We're looking to find those elements and find creative ways to kind of like break into something. The more we know about it, the better we protect. So if we're a hacker, that our job is to protect or to find issues so that someone else can fix those bugs. Or we're actually a developer who's building code and have to think about those things. We're becoming better and better by understanding them better and by kind of like thinking about those creative ways to get in. So I think this is exactly the point of this. And it's so fun to see that people here came up with so many creative ideas within the 6 hours, and we're able to like really come up with some cool and unique solutions. So with that, I think, again, let's just summarize. So we had a wonderful event. The winners will be, formally announced tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Write-ups we'd love to get write-ups, people. Last time we got really cool write-ups. So now you have 2 weeks time through, 10 a.m. the following Sunday, okay? And you can submit your write-up. We'll definitely publish all of them, unless they're flawed, but they're probably not going to be flawed. So we're probably publishing all of them. We're going to check them and review them. And the ones that are really, really shine, you'll get swag, and you'll get credits for swag, and you can go to the swag shop and get your things. So that's really cool, guys, and thank you very much. And we'd love to get, again, as much as we can get from you, feedback, ideas for challenges, ideas for different approaches and things, even feedback about the platform. We have built here a platform is fairly unique because it's small pieces of code. So we built something that is particular for the Blitz. And if you have ideas or thoughts about it, that's also very welcome. We want to make it a community thing and a habit. So thank you very much, everyone. And we're going to wrap it up now.
Thank you a lot. And yeah, any questions, let us know. Take care and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Bye.